All right, guys, so now we're going to start on some of the JavaScript widgets that are included with Bootstrap. Now, remember, for these, you need to make sure that you have, the sandbox has it, but if you're doing this, outside of the sandbox in your own projects, you need to make sure you're including jQuery, Popper.js, and the Bootstrap JavaScript. All right, so we're going to start with Carousel Slider. So we're on the 5_2 carousel HTML file, and what I have here under this simple slider is just basically some images wrapped in some divs. Okay, so basically we have a div, another one, and then each individual image in their own div. And I have this inside a grid, a row, with the column of SM8 and then margin auto to push everything to the middle. All right, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be in a grid or anything like that. It's just the way I wanted to display it. Okay, so basically we just need to pay attention to this stuff. So to create a slider, first thing we want to do is we want to give this a class, this top div of carousel, and then we also want to give it a class of slide. I'm also going to do an MB5, a margin bottom 5, just to push everything below it down, but this has nothing to do with the actual slider. Now this needs another attribute called data ride. So we're going to say data-ride, and we're going to specify it as a carousel. All right, and then one other thing we need to do on this div is add an ID, and we're going to call it slider1. Okay, now this second div here is going to have a class of slider inner. So carousel inner. And then each div that is around the image is going to have a class of carousel item. Okay, so carousel item, and then we'll go ahead and copy that and put that here and here. All right, now whichever one you want to be shown when the page loads, you want to just mark as active. So we'll add the class of active to this first div. Now this alone, this markup, should actually make the slider work. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and notice that the other images now disappear, and this should slide on its own after a certain amount of time. So there we go. So now it's showing the second image, and then it should change to the next, and I'll show you how to change the frequency and stuff. And there we go. So now we do have a working slider. Now when we make this a little smaller, you'll see that the image, it kind of changes a little bit. What I'm going to do is add, or the size changes, I'm going to add a class of display block and then image-fluid to each of these images. So here and save, and now it's going to keep its size, okay, relative to its container. Okay, so now what I want to do is show you a slider with controls, because right now we don't really have any control over it. It just goes. So what I'll do is I'll copy everything we just did and then go right here under this comment and paste it in. All right, now what I'm going to do is go, let's see, we want to go down to, let's see, so this is the carousel item right here, and then this is the carousel inner. What we want to do is we want to be within the carousel but after the inner. So we want to be within the first div, so right here. And then we can add our controls. So this is going to be an A tag, and we're going to give it a class of carousel-control-prev, like that. And then the href here is going to go to the ID of the slider. Now remember, I did slider 1 as the ID here. Right here, this is a whole different slider I'm building, so I'm going to give this one an ID of slider 2. And then for the href, it actually has to go to a number sign and then whatever slider we're dealing with, so slider 2. And then we also need to add one more attribute here of data dash slide, and we need to say that this is for the previous image. Okay, now inside the link here, I want to put a previous icon, so we can actually do a span with the class of carousel dash control dash prev dash icon. Okay, if we do that, it should give us the icon. Now for the next control, I'm just going to copy this whole A tag here, paste this in, and change this class to next. We want to change the data slide value to next, and we want to change the icon to next icon. And let's go ahead and save that. And if we go down here, now you'll see we have arrows that we can actually click, and we can control the slider in both ways. Okay, so it's as easy as that to add controls. Now we can also add indicators, so basically some dots down at the bottom representing each image, and you know, we can control it with that. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to copy what we just did because I want to include the controls as well. So I'm going to grab the whole slider 2 we just did with the controls, go right down here, paste it in, and change the ID to slider 3. We also want to make sure we change these controls IDs to slider 3. Now to get the indicators, we want to go up here, and we want to be right above the carousel inner. Okay, and then here we're going to put in an ordered list tag with the class of carousel dash indicators, and then we'll have an li. This one's going to have a class of active, and we want to add a data target, so just a special attribute called data target, and we want to put the ID of the slider, which in this case is slider 3. And then we want to specify where this should, what image this should show. So we're going to say data slide 2, and it starts at 0, so we want this to go to 0. Okay, and that should be it. So, or at least for that list item. So I'm going to copy this, paste it in 2 more times, and we only want the active class on the first one, so we're going to get rid of these. And we want to keep the data target as slider 3, but then we just want to change this to 1 and this to 2. So let's go ahead and save that, and let's go down here. And now notice we have the arrows. You can see it better over this image. And we also have the indicators, and whatever image is currently showing, that indicator will light up. And you can also click on the indicators to maneuver the images. All right, so pretty cool. So the last thing I want to show you is how to add captions. So for the captions, we're just going to copy everything we just did with the indicators. Okay, so we're kind of just beefing up our sliders as we go along. And we'll paste this in. This will be slider 4. You want to make sure you change this everywhere. So here and also down here. Or else, if you don't do this, your arrows and your indicators are going to control a different slider. But usually you won't have, I mean, in most cases, you won't have more than one slider on a page, usually. All right, so now to add captions, we want to go, let's see, we want to go to each individual item here. So inside carousel item, we want to go under the image, and we're going to add a div. Let's add a div with the class of carousel dash caption. I'm going to say display none, and then I'm going to say display, oops, we actually need to put a dot here. So d dash none and d dash, and then I'm going to do md dash block. Now the reason that I'm putting this D none, so this will say display none, so don't display this caption at all, and then this one will say, all right, we'll display it on medium-sized screens and up. The reason I did this is because I don't want the caption to show on a very small screen because it just looks very, cramped. So I'll usually do this when I'll use a caption. And then in here, in this div, we just can put whatever. We can put an H3 and we'll say slide or slider. We'll say slide 1. And then underneath we'll put a paragraph, and I'll just do like lorem 10 tab. Okay, put some dummy text in there. And then I'm just going to grab the whole caption div, go to the next one under the image, paste that in. We'll change this to slide 2 for the text. Go to the next one, change this to slide 3, and let's save that. And now you can see we have a caption. This image, this is kind of a bad image because it's so bright, but here you can see we have the image, the caption. And if I were to make this really small, it goes away. Because if we had the caption with the image this small, we wouldn't be able to really read it anyway. So as soon as it hits medium screens, then the caption shows. Now I want to show you how we can actually change up like the interval and stuff like that. So let's go down to the bottom here. Underneath our last script include of Bootstrap.js, you'll see an empty set of script tags. In here, we can actually use some jQuery to edit some properties of the carousel. So what we can do is grab the carousel class. So we'll say .carousel and then just say .carousel again. And in here, we can pass in some curly braces with some options. So let's say interval, and let's set it to, let's do 1,000, which is actually 1 second because it's in milliseconds. So if I save, now you'll see that each second it'll change, which is way too fast. But just to show you, you can change this. Let's put it to 6, which I think might be the default, or 3. I'm not actually sure what the default is. But now it will be every 6 seconds. All right, now we can also add some other options like keyboard. If we want to be able to change it with the keyboard, we could set that to true. We could add pause. So if we wanted to be able to pause the image, for instance, on hover, we could do that. So I'm going to save this, and then actually let's change this to, we'll change it to 3 so it goes a little faster. And if I hover over this, this one won't change. Okay, see how it's not changing? And I think I can actually catch it like in the middle. Let me see. Oh, let me try that again. Oh, I guess I can't do that. I thought we could kind of catch it, but we can't. As long as we're hovering over it, though, then it won't change. So if you wanted someone to be able to you know, look at the image and really take it in without it sliding away on them, you could set that to hover. All right, and then let's see. We can also add a wrap option and set that to true. And then what that will do is, actually it's true by default. It just means that it'll keep going. Okay, so once it gets to the last one, it'll go back to the first. But if we set it to false, let's see what happens. We'll use the arrow here. And now notice I can't go any further. It's all going to stop on the last image. So if you want it to do that, you can set wrap to false. But I'm going to just set that back to true. All right, so that's pretty much it for options. Now, if you wanted to have some kind of JavaScript event fire off when it starts and ends a slide, you could do that as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up my Chrome tools. So you can go to your menu, more tools, developer tools, or you can hit F12 in Windows, or I think it's Command Option I in on a Mac. And you can go to your console here. And I'm not going to get too deep into JavaScript here. I just want to show you guys that it is possible. I'm going to grab with jQuery the 4th slider, which has an ID of slider 4, and then I'm going to say .on. So basically on in some kind of event, and in Bootstrap we have a slide.bs.carousel event that we can hook into, and then call a callback function, and we can do something in JavaScript. So in this case, I'm just going to console log, and I'm just going to say slide. Okay, so now let's save that, and then when slider 4 takes off, watch down here. Okay, so you see that now that event is called, and it's going to run, and it's going to say slide every time. And then we also have another event, so I'll copy this. We have another one called slid. So I'll just take the E off here, and let's take the E off here, and let's see when that runs. So it should take off and slide. Oh, I'm sorry, I was hovering over it, so it wasn't going. So slide and then slid. So basically, when it takes off, it slides. When it stops, it runs slid. So if you wanted something in your UI or something on your website or application to happen every time this image slid or slides, then you could do that. You could do that in your JavaScript. I mean, that's beyond this course, but I just wanted to show you that it is possible. All right, so that's going to be it, guys, for this video. In the next one, we're going to take a look at the collapse widget and also an accordion menu.